Welcome everybody, I'm John Wally, and today we're going to be talking about installing Tenable OT, the core appliance on Proxmox. So this is going to be a new series. We've done this before, but we've done it on ESXi or VMware. I've had a lot of back-end direct messages from several sources asking for how to install this on Proxmox, especially for internal lab purposes. So we're going to be covering that today. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, as you'll see up on my screen, I have Proxmox installed. This is a brand new installation. For anybody that's interested, I'm running this on a little Intel NUC and it runs really well. If you're interested in those builds, let me know. I'll tell you what I put into mine. I can usually run about 15 VMs off of this on a little NUC. So let's go ahead and get our files and get started. So the first thing I want to do is go over to downloads.tenable.com. We're going to go to Tenable Core. If we click on Tenable Core, we're going to scroll down and we're going to grab our Tenable Course plus Tenable OT offline ISO. This is going to be important that we get the offline version. That way everything's self-contained and we don't have to worry about reaching out over the internet or having things kind of like slow down because of that. It's a lot easier just to download from the very beginning. We're not going to do the OVA because we're going to do some changes to the settings and we're going to make sure that this works. OVAs a lot of times will work when you get in with ESXi, but even every once in a while you'll see some difficulties there, seeing how the base specs around that are 4 CPUs, 16 gigs of RAM, and 205 gigabits of space. And so you can run into some performance problems by doing that. To make sure everything's clean, I typically recommend just going with the ISO and installing, and that's in a VMware environment or on Proxmox. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is go to my data center view or my server view. You'll see these different ones. I'm going to say server view here, and I'm going to go into my local drive. And yours may be called something different, but like I said, this is a brand new generic build so that it'll help for anybody that's installing this directly for the very first time. I'm going to go to my ISO images under my drive and I'm going to say upload. Now I've already downloaded the ISO file to make this a little bit faster, but you'll see here that I have my Tenable OT offline ISO. We're going to go ahead and open this up and I'm going to say upload. All right, and it looks like our task is okay, and we've uploaded our offline version. So now what we want to do is go back to our data center, and we're going to create our VM. When we ask for a name, this has to be something that's like a host name. So I'm going to say Tenable OT. I'm going to do a -ICP. Now ICP stands for Indigi Core Platform. Tenable bought the core platform Indigi about 5 years ago. The reason we still kind of use that ICP terminology is because, as you'll see in the downloads in Tenable, there's a lot of different Tenable cores. You have it for Security Center, you have it for Nessus, you have it for OT sensors, for enterprise managers. You even have it for these sensor proxies. So Tenable Core is the operating system, so it can get really confusing when you say it's Tenable OT Core versus a sensor that is also running Tenable Core. It gets really confusing in the language. So you'll see a lot of people that have worked around the Tenable products. We actually still use the ICP terminology because then it's clear what we're talking about. All right, so I'm going to say Tenable OT-ICP. I'm going to hit next. And then it's going to ask me for an image in my local pool. And this is where we uploaded our image. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to select my offline image. And we can go ahead and hit next for this one as well. I'm going to hit system. Everything here is good. We don't need to change anything else here. I'm going to go to my disk. And I can say what disk size I want. Obviously 32 is not going to be enough. I'm going to go ahead and say that I want 500 gigabits of space on this. and I'm going to hit next again. My CPU, I can say how many sockets or how many cores. I'm going to say I want to have at least 4 cores on here. If this is not a lab environment and it's a live environment, you're going to want a lot more than that. And there's a way of looking that up. If you go to docs.tenable.com, oops, docs, and we go to OT security, and we go and look at the user guide, it'll help you do some of that sizing. So I'm going to go down to get started with Tenable OT, and you'll see the first block here is system requirements. If I click on those system requirements, it'll tell me what I need to install based on how much traffic I have coming in. So you see here, this is fairly small what we put in place as far as storage, memory, those kind of things. But it's saying, hey, we need at least 4 cores and at least 16 gigs of RAM. So as we set these up, you'll see we did 4 cores, and then we hit next. We're going to say we need at least 16 gigs of RAM. We're going to go to network, and we're going to make sure that we're on the proper network. For me, I just have 1 on my virtual network. You may have 2, 1 for monitoring. And this Proxmox is a little different than ESXi in this, as you don't have to set up a VLAN 4095 to pick up span traffic. You can do it off your regular virtual bridge. So it automatically picks up all VLANs if you have no VLAN selected. We're going to go ahead and hit next here, and we're going to confirm. Now here's the trick. You're going to get this 100. It's going to start building it. And as this builds this out, before we power on, you'll see it's done here. We're going to go to the hardware tab, and we need to add 3 additional network adapters, because you'll see we have 1, but we need to have 3. So I'm going to say add, and I'm going to go down to my network device, and I'm going to add another one. So that's 2 that we have now. We're going to add 3. And now we're going to add our 4th one. So we should have a total of 4 network devices here. Once those are set up, we can come back over to our summary, and we can get started. So I'm going to go to console, and we're going to go ahead and say start now. Now we're going to have an option for how we install. We can say install Tenable Core, or we can install over serial cable. The only time you're really going to be using the serial cable portion is if you're installing on actual hardware. All right, so we're going to go to Tenable Core, and we're going to hit enter. And we're going to go through the whole install. Now I'm not going to go through all of this so that you watch this. I'm going to fast forward this section, and when this is done, we'll come back. All right, so it looks like we've gone through 2 reboots, and now we're at the Tenable login screen. And this is something to be aware of. When you're doing an install, there's a slight bug in Proxmox, because I think the kickstart on the ISO is looking for a virtual instance on ESXi, not necessarily on Proxmox. So I think the message gets a little funny in this. So you're going to let this sit, and you're going to get an error at the end of this. So it's going to run some install things. It's going to try to pull down a repository. And then when it tries to issue that, you're going to have some problems with that. But I'm going to show you how to fix that. It's really the only really buggy thing in working with Proxmox, and it's a really simple fix. So we're going to wait here and sometimes this will take 2 or 3 minutes before you'll start seeing this install. So again, I'm going to speed up a little bit after this and show you what's going to go through that process, how it installs, and where you can start working with the system again after you get an error. All right. Now here's the error that I was talking about that you would get, where you have this failed to refresh your list of available software updates. That's okay, we can fix this. Once you see this, we can go ahead and hit enter on the screen, and this will allow us to get to a command prompt again where we can put in a login. Now by default, our login is wizard. Oops. And the password is admin. And we can say, do you want to configure a static IP address? Here we want to say yes. We're going to go to NIC 0. We're going to tab through, and we want to change this from an automatic to manual. And then we're going to go to show. We're going to add an address. For me, I'm going to do 10.2.9.200. And I'm going to do a /24 after this. Now, having the CIDR behind the address is very important. If you just put in the address, for example, because this starts with a 10, it's going to assume it's a /8. So you want to make sure you always put the CIDR whenever you're adding an address in here. We're going to go down to gateway. I'm going to add my gateway. I'm going to go to DNS servers. And for me, I'm going to do Google DNS, but you could use your local DNS whenever you're doing this. We're going to go down to where it says require IPv4 addressing, and we're going to say yes, we want that. And then I'm going to go to OK. We're going to go over and quit. And then it's going to ask me if I want to set up an administrator account. I'm going to say no here. And one of the reasons I found is sometimes in these consoles, and I haven't experienced this in Proxmox, but I've experienced it in ESXi or vSphere, is sometimes keyboard mapping to the console doesn't work. I've had an example where one of my shift keys doesn't actually do capitalized letters. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with the passwords forever. So for that reason, I do not set up my administrator account here. I wait. So I'm going to open a new tab here, and I'm going to go to my new IP address. So I'm going to say 10.2.9.200, and I'm going to go to port 8000. We're going to accept that our connection is not private, and this will give an opportunity to log in. We're going to log in again with that wizard account, so WIZARD, and then our password, all lowercase, is admin. We're going to log in, and it's going to ask me to create a new administrator. I'm going to call my administrator admin. And we're going to create our account. It's going to say finish the setup, and it's going to log us out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in and say admin. I'm going to log in. And I'm going to go up to my right corner and I'm going to say, click on this limited access. Again, I'm going to put in my password. And it's going to ask me if I want to install OT. I'm going to wait for a second and go down to update management. And I'm going to say that I want to see how it says we couldn't open a file. That's okay. I'm going to refresh here. You'll see I have a bunch of updates that need to go in up here, so it'll probably need a reboot before we can actually do an install. And I think that's what's caused our error on the back end that we saw when we were going through that. It has something to do with these specific updates that did not go through from that package. All right, so my system is good. It's up to date. I just need to do my reboot. So I'm going to go to Overview. I'm going to click Reboot. I'm going to do it now, and I'm going to reboot. All right, I'm going to reconnect. I'm going to log back in. I have administrative access. Now I can go to Tenable OT and install our system. You notice we don't have any of those exclamation points anymore. So the first thing we did is we went through the install, and that installed Tenable Core, the operating system, and got it running. Now we're installing the application. This will take a couple of minutes before that process starts kicking off, and then once it does, you'll start seeing the logs fill up as we go through. All right, it says it's now starting Tenable OT security. One of the things that we can do while this is booting up, because Tenable OT works on Docker, we can go over to our terminal and we can type in Docker ps-a to show all of our containers and what status they're in. So there's going to be about 10 containers that did not start. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's okay. If there's more than 10, you might want to look at it. But this means our service is up and running at a bare minimum. So if you want to look at this, we can actually go to our OT security, and we can click on this to take us over to our 443 address so that we can get to our actual interface. So we're going to go here, and it's going to walk us through a setup wizard. So I'm going to do this quickly. There's other videos where we go through the setup, but I want to show that this is up and functional for this video. So I'm going to do this pretty quickly, and we're going to complete and restart. And it's going to ask us for a license activation. I'm going to go ahead and do this quickly as well, just to kind of knock this out and get it out of the way. We're going to speed pass through this place, but we'll jump back in once it's done. All right, and you'll see here now that the system has been activated successfully. If we go back over, what you will see is we still don't have all of our containers up and running. And like I said before, this is by design. The reason why is now that everything's running, it's activated, we could unplug, shut down, go put this in our environment, and then it would start collecting data. So you have that one last step of clicking enable the system. We're going to go ahead and enable. And if you want to watch this, these other containers will come up. You see they're starting to come up one by one. All right, so now all containers are up once we hit enable. So hopefully that'll help you kind of troubleshoot as you're going through and setting the system up as well. All right, and now our system is up and running with a brand new fresh interface. So this is all it takes. I hope this has been helpful in getting Tenable OT running on Proxmox. We'll be doing a separate module on sensors and connecting sensors on the same backend and how do we collect data. But until next time, I hope you have a great day. If this has been helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe, and as always, I answer and follow my comments. So if you have questions or suggestions on how we could do things or what you want to cover, I'm always happy to hear it. Have a good one.